Hey there, this is the Resistor Vic podcast. I'm here to get folks thinking about politics as something that's really about regular people like you and me, and to realize that together we can make a difference.
Everybody, it's Big Mike. I am here today with State Senator Julie Gonzales running for U.S. Senate against incumbent John Hickenlooper. And this will also be for the Resistor Vic podcast. So welcome to the Resistance. And let's get started. Julie, introduce yourself and tell folks how you got involved in politics and why you're running.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for this opportunity. My name is Julie Gonzales, and I am a candidate for the U.S. Senate here in Colorado. My family goes back generations down in Southern Colorado, so Huerfano County and the Gardner area. And we're the kind of old school Chicanos where we didn't cross the border crossed us. And I have all of these memories of my mom and my dad really struggling hard to just make ends meet and do the work. And also, while still doing all of that, still working to support others. And they really embodied for me and modeled this idea of you lift as you rise. And so they were the people who taught me the values that I now hold dear as an organizer and as a state legislator. The idea that education is fundamental, the idea that you're never strong enough to not need, you're never strong enough to not need help, to not support others in so doing. And these ideas that it doesn't matter how much money you have in your bank account. It's how you act and how you treat people that actually matters. And so it's in that context that as things now feel like they are on fire, because they are, it then becomes that much more important for us, regular people, to step up and take on these challenges. Because look, no one's going to swoop in and save us. We're the ones that we've been waiting for. And to see in this moment that John Hickenlooper is embodying this go along to get along politics, we need to stand up and make a change.
Got it. Speaking of on fire, Nebraska is so.
Jesus.
And Colorado is looking at, if not the lowest snowpack in recorded history, definitely in the top three. So let's jump right in. Climate change, obviously, the effects are here. What impact would you have as U.S. Senator to get us on a track to start addressing these issues and taking that challenge head on?
You know, what I have seen in my time in the legislature has been deeply informed by, again, my family's land down in Southern Colorado. Back in 2018, during the spring fire, which at the time was one of the top 10 largest fires in Colorado state history. And now I don't even know if it cracks the top 10 anymore because the fires have gotten bigger and there's been so many of them. But back in 2018, we thought our family's land was going to burn. By the grace of, the fire turning, or the winds turning, it ended up not burning. But 3 years later, there was a mudslide that took out the ditch that has provided our family and 6 other families water rights for well over 100 years. That mudslide took that out. And to me, both on an individual family scale, and then when you zoom out and you look at the climate crisis writ large, you realize that for well over a generation, these big corporations have known the impacts and the harms that they were causing, and instead tried to put forward this idea that it was about personal responsibility, that you as an individual ought to reduce, reuse, recycle, while they were continuing to spew out incredible amounts of pollution and harm. in a way that is now causing incredible harm and long-lasting damage to our climate and to our people. And so then the question becomes really clearly, who's going to be willing to stand up to those corporations that are polluting our people and our planet? And that's the work that I have done in the state Senate. I represent Northwest and downtown Denver now currently. That includes 80216, Globeville, Elyria, Swansea, one of the most polluted zip codes in the country. And I've done the work to hold these toxic polluters like Suncor to account. And yet we also see the extent to which these corporations will just try to add in fines to the cost of doing business. And so it really becomes incumbent upon us to demand better action from our federal leaders. And that's why I believe a Green New Deal is fundamentally the path forward. I'm proud to have been endorsed by the Sunrise Denver hub here because we've got to protect our people and our planet first.
Great, and that's a great lead in right now, especially I believe in Globeville, Swansea. They're trying to build AI data centers here in Colorado. These facilities require huge amounts of water. In the American West, water is a precious resource. So would it be within your realm as a U.S. Senator to, I suppose, kind of limit the effects that these AI data centers will have on water usage, particularly in the West?
Absolutely. So I will just say that I support Bernie Sanders' moratorium on AI data centers because I believe that the harm that they are causing is there's those harms are still just being understood and uncovered. Part of what we are witnessing in this moment from states that did go and roll out the red carpet to try to attract jobs. Virginia, there are other states across the country. Virginia is now about to engage in a special session to try to roll back some of that red carpet that they had initially laid out to try and attract those jobs because they are recognizing the environmental impacts of these data centers and also the economic impacts. And so it really then begs the question. Look, I was just at a community meeting there in GES a couple of weeks back, and because this was already in a working class and largely zoned industrial area, this core site data center was able to just come in and start building, and city council wasn't notified. They submitted a permit to just say, hey, we're going to be doing some construction here. Hey, look, we're not causing air quality issues. And so they just had that use by right in order to start building. And that happened to community, not with community. As community was asking questions, they either provided incomplete answers or they just didn't bother showing up at all. And so to see now city council members and state legislators asking questions and still not getting sufficient responses, I think it begs the question, are we going to allow corporations to control our lives and our water, or are we the people going to make these decisions? And that to me is fundamental. And I think especially when we are in the midst of the warmest spring on record, what is looking to be the warmest spring on record, and certainly one of the warmest winters on record, if not the most, that then begs the question, what are we doing?
And it's not just water, it's also electricity. AI data centers require a massive amount of electricity, which could affect the electricity bills of the people in those communities. Should they be forced to generate their own clean energy? And is that something you could do in the U.S. Senate?
part of what I think the tension that we have been hearing. I was just last week in a state committee hearing for the Transportation and Energy Committee, as there is a bill that moving through the state legislature currently, being sponsored by Senator Kathy Kipp and Representative Kyle Brown, Senate Bill 102. What that bill would do is to say for large load data centers, you have to meet these thresholds and parameters before you can go forward. And yet the pushback from industry, there was one point at which there was a lobbyist for a coalition of data center corporations, and they just had this like very uh, blase, no, I don't even remember it. That's how sort of generic the name was. And I was like, so who are you talking about? Who is a member of your coalition? And this lobbyist was like, I can get back to you on that. Like, if you can't even name all of the members of your coalition for these corporations that you're here to represent to talk about why they can't be held to account to engage in these reasonable asks, whether it's around providing clean electricity, whether it's around what the water usage is going to look like, if it's around what the jobs are going to entail, then how do we expect to be able to trust them to just do the right thing? I am deeply concerned about these centers' ability to be honest and direct without those of us in the halls of power holding those corporations to account. And so that is the level of the work that we are engaged in right now, and the type of leadership that I believe that we fundamentally need in Washington, D.C. Because you think John Hickenlooper is going to go and ask those tough questions and hold those corporations to account? Hard pass, man.
Yes, and speaking of John Hickenlooper, obviously there's quite a generational gap between yourself and him, um, and in my opinion, I have great respect for the silent and greatest generations. They built the greatest uh, ladders of opportunity the world has ever really seen. And boomers, such as John Hickenlooper and their generation, pulled all the ladders up behind them. So, what would your role in the U.S. Senate be in rebuilding these ladders and making, class mobility available in America again?
That's such a great question. And let me start by saying that when I was a baby organizer, working at an organization called Padres y Jóvenes Unidos, Parents and Youth United, one of my mentors, Ricardo Martinez, really taught me the importance of intergenerational movements, that you need the fire of the babies, but you need the wisdom of the elders as well. Look, I think the US Senate is well represented with elders right now, but we need some new, younger voices to come and bring that fire. And that to me is why I'm so excited to step up and run. Because as a millennial, I'll just say my entire life, my entire life has been um, crisis after crisis after crisis. And those of us who feel like we are working harder than ever, two jobs plus a side hustle, in order to just be able to afford housing and healthcare. And that is that is not sustainable. It's very much not the American dream that we were taught as kids, that if you worked hard, you got a good education, that you'd be able to afford a house with a white picket fence and 2.3 kids and a dog, right? Like that's just like not meeting, that's not where we're at right now. But when you then see that this MAGA administration is going and suddenly saying, hey, we've got enough money for $1 billion a day for the war in Iran. And oh, by the way, we're going to need $200 billion for this war, which would pass and fund, I'm sorry, which otherwise could be used to fund Medicare for all, universal child and elder care, and SNAP benefits for working people. We think of the housing that we could build with that much money, with a tenth of that much money, right? And it demonstrates that our priorities are so fundamentally out of whack. And it's why I believe that, look, no one is coming to save us but us. And those of us who are younger need to start stepping up and doing the work. And we have been. And that's why I'm so excited about the work that you're doing through this podcast, the work that so many people are doing out in community, whether that's through mutual aid, whether that's stepping up to run themselves, whether that's doing advocacy and organizing work. We are the ones that we have been waiting for, y'all. So let's go and take that power and actually build an economy that works for people like us as opposed to just working for the billionaires.
And to your point about the intergenerational, the fire and the wisdom, we just saw Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren endorse Graham Plattner in Maine. Have you reached out to either campaign or to Justice Democrats or any of those progressive movements for their support?
Absolutely, absolutely. Look, I will say that I think it is a really exciting to see the energy that Graham Plattner and that other progressives across the country are generating. And I do think that we are the only primary challenge of a sitting incumbent U.S. senator that is coming from the left in a safe blue state, right? And so this is an incredible opportunity to demonstrate that it is not just about whether there is a D or an R behind your name. It is also about the caliber of leader that you are. And so we have absolutely reached out to all of those organizations, to Justice Dems, to Bernie, to Senator Warren, to Our Revolution, and so on and so forth. And we are working hard to earn their support. I am proud that we've been endorsed by Colorado Indivisible, by the Working Families Party, and by SEIU and many others, because look, when we say we've got to walk the walk, right? To me, that also means not only endorsing in open seats, but sometimes making the hard decision about endorsing against one of your colleagues. It is rare. And as a state legislator, I know how hard that can be to endorse against a sitting colleague. But yet, what has Senator Hickenlooper done over the past 5.5 years that has made Coloradans' lives better, that has led the fight on any issue? And that's the question I think that we on the left really need to interrogate ourselves about and work to elect leaders who have actually been doing the work, regardless of who's been in office.
And speaking of working family parties, are you supported by DSA? Have you reached out to DSA? And do you consider yourself a democratic socialist, or are you more of a social democrat, as we see with your standard run-of-the-mill Democrats?
Look, I believe I consider myself to be a Working Families Party Democrat because I think that as an organizer, you got to meet people where you're at and where they're at. And so to me, when it comes to unrigging our economy, advancing freedom to join a union, freedom to make your own decisions about your own body, to me, those are the values that I am so proud to align with. I was a founding member of the Colorado Working Families Party before I even thought about running for office. And so that's how I align and I identify. When I first ran for the state Senate back in 2018, Denver DSA was doing I thought the best organizing of young people and renters in the city. And they supported my campaign, and I was so honored and proud about that. I joined as a member and was a member for a year, and then like because I was also a first year state legislator, um, my membership lapsed. I never went to a meeting because the Capitol itself was like super intense. And so I take what membership means incredibly seriously. And so I align in the values. I align with the values that DSA espouses. Uh, I'm hoping to be one of the recommended candidates because I think we all recognize that in this moment, I don't want to get super caught up on detail on like the nuance of like democratic socialism versus working families party. My sense is how are we going to build a broad-based coalition that includes the leftist of the left and all of the other people who are just taking their first steps into politics for the very first time? How do we create spaces for everybody to get involved so that we can overcome and defeat fascism for once and for all? That to me is my goal.
And speaking of fascism, obviously, uh, the U.S. has been downgraded in our democracy rating across several different sources. Um, so leaning in that direction, let's start with corporate and APAC money. Do you take it, and would you deny it if they tried?
I do not accept any corporate PAC money, full stop. That includes taking $0 from APAC. I don't think that the corporate lobby is going to want to try to give me money in the first place. But if they were to, I would deny it. I would decline it. My first year, when I first ran for the state senate, at one point, the Wells Fargo PAC just mailed me a check. And at that time, they were incredibly deeply invested in private immigration detention facilities. And so I very clearly declined, and I posted about it on my social media way back then to say, no, thank you. I do not take any corporate PAC money. And then that actually it was a $400 check. And we ended up raising from just regular people who were like, hell yeah, thank you for actually living your values. In like $5 and $10 increments, we ended up raising more than what that corporate PAC check would have otherwise been, right? And that to me is the power of something that AG candidate David Seligman often says, where it's about the many versus the money, right? And we have to be willing to say no to certain things because if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And so I think in this moment, there's a real question. Hickenlooper, by contrast, has taken almost $2 million in APAC money over the years, and is completely of that mindset that any money is good money, and so my sense is that it's why he has decided to forego the caucus and assembly process because he doesn't want to engage with the base, right? He just wants to pay for a paid signature petition collection program to get on the ballot. And then he thinks he's just going to buy this election. I think Colorado voters are smarter than that, are more discerning than that. And in this moment, when we are seeing the gap between the billionaires and the rest of us so starkly in this moment, I think voters want a candidate who's going to be clear about the type of money that they will or will not accept.
And would you support overturning Citizens United as a senator? And also, would you support Senator Sanders' 5% wealth tax that he's recently proposed?
Yes, and yes. To me, when I'm talking about unrigging the economy, it is absolutely about overturning Citizens United, banning insider stock trading, and also doing the work to tax the billionaires and the corporations that they control so that we can actually pay for the programs that would work for us, not just Jeff Bezos and not just Mark Zuckerberg and all of those bajillionaires, right? Like, we don't need to be helping subsidize their seventh yacht or whatever it is, right? But right now, we are witnessing the harm of the policies that these Republicans are putting forward right now that move us in the other direction, right? HR1 went and stripped our social safety net in order to pay for tax cuts for billionaires and to fund ICE to the tune of $75 billion. And so to me, absolutely supporting policies that move us in the opposite direction, back to making the wealthy pay their fair share, is absolutely fundamental.
And sticking with the attacks on democracy, Republicans right now are trying to force the SAVE Act through Congress. Obviously, you're not in office yet, so give us your thoughts on the SAVE Act and we even heard Mike Johnson recently got caught on camera saying he's excited that 18% of the electorate may not be able to vote. So just give us your thoughts on the SAVE Act and what are our best options for stopping that?
This, to me, is a demonstration of the extent to which, look, on Team Blue, right, on the left, broadly, I think sometimes people will say, oh, well, I don't really know. I agree with this candidate on 8 out of the 10 issues, but I don't know if we're like really aligned yet. But on Team Red, their only point of unity at this point is fealty to Donald J. Trump. And you can see that by the extent to which they're jamming through the SAVE Act. Thune knows that they don't have the votes, and they're still going through this song and dance, and because President Trump demanded it, right? And so they are giddy about the proposition of potentially disfranchising so many, particularly women, but not only women, right? So many voters that they are willing to just go through the charade and the spectacle of it. Then that raises the question, right? What will Democrats do to be sand in the gears, to stand up and fight? And I think that in this moment, there is an odd sort of real question. There's an odd question that I think really pertains to us here in Colorado, because the only election denier and propagator of the big lie that is still in prison right now is election denier Tina Peters, right? And Jared Polis, our dear governor, is making all sorts of signals that he is still actively considering whether or not to grant a pardon to Tina Peters. That, if he were to grant that pardon, would be an incredible gift and win to those election deniers and purveyors of the big lie. And we have to fight that with every tool that we've got, because first and foremost, every good application for clemency involves demonstrating rehabilitation and remorse, things that up until Governor Polis said, hey, that is a requirement. Her lawyers then said, hey guys, she has remorse now. But come on. We all know that this is song and dance and games and gamesmanship in order to try to create more energy and momentum for Trump's big lie. We have to fight back against it. And instead, we ought to be doing the work to ensure that every American can cast their ballot free from fear and intimidation. Look, last year I ran the bill, Senate Bill 25001, the Colorado Voting Rights Act, to ensure that in Colorado, that every Coloradan who is eligible to do so can cast that ballot free from fear and intimidation. We ought to back that up at the federal level with the John Lewis Voting Rights Act.
Gotcha. And a while back, you had mentioned ICE. I did want to touch on that. Obviously, one of the biggest stories right now. And actually, our guest next week, Logan Davis, with the Colorado Times Recorder, recently broke a story about secret ICE detention facilities all over the U.S. Can ICE be reformed, or does it need to be abolished and started again from the ground up?
There's a reason we've got the coffee mug, y'all.
Oh, there you go.
To abolish ICE, because I will just say that, look, I graduated high school. My dad was a rancher, and we moved down when I was about in the summer between fourth and fifth grade. We moved down to deep South Texas. My dad was managing a big ranch down there. And I graduated in 2001 from high school. And that summer, that's when the DREAM Act was first introduced. The DREAM Act is a bill that would give undocumented young people a path to citizenship if they either go to college or they serve in the armed forces. And the DREAM Act is now old enough to get a beer, and we still haven't signed it into law, right? And ICE is younger than the DREAM Act. And so this idea that like, oh, let's just put body cams on so that we can have film evidence of, ICE officers murdering people in the streets. Nope, sorry, we don't need that. We already have documented evidence of body cam footage. ICE does not need to be reformed. It needs to be abolished. Full stop. We ought to replace it with an immigration system that provides a path to citizenship, that actually concretizes respect for human rights and due process at the core of its functioning as an agency. And that means having enough immigration judges, having enough immigration officers who like look at applications so that you're not languishing. Right now if you're in immigration court, you're languishing years between court hearings because the cases are so backed up. If you've got an application for citizenship or for permanent residency, you're looking at sometimes years, if not decades, to get that case reviewed by an immigration officer, right? So instead of going and hiring ICE agents, let's actually put those resources there. And then let's also make sure that there is access to legal counsel so that you don't have 3-year-olds representing themselves in immigration court, right? That you don't have people who fill out these incredibly complicated forms on their own without the benefit of an attorney. And that to me is what reforming our broken immigration system should look like. But it absolutely includes abolishing ICE and replacing it with a system that actually works.
Yes, I have often thought about we need not one, but like a series of Ellis Islands of the South, whether it's San Diego, El Paso. I've even thrown out Guantanamo Bay. Turn these into immigration processing facilities where people can come and legally get whatever, if they just want to come in and work, if they want to come in and become a citizen eventually, and get all that handled the way we used to, as they're coming in.
Totally. No, for years. So from about 2000, so I mentioned earlier, right, that I was an organizer with Padres y Jóvenes Unidos. I ended up being a founding member of the United We Dream national network that supports and defends immigrant rights for undocumented young people. And then through that, I began organizing. I was a director of organizing with the Colorado Immigrant Rights Coalition, and then worked at the Meyer Law Office, which is an immigration and criminal defense law firm, for many years. And that's the work that I was doing prior to running for office. And so, when Trump came down the golden escalator, espousing all of these racist and xenophobic ideas, when a lot of mainstream Republicans and Democrats were like, oh, don't worry, he doesn't have a chance in hell. We were instead, those of us in the immigrant rights movement were like, oh no, he does have a chance. And I took a leave from working at the Meyer Law Office to go and try to make sure that Donald Trump didn't get elected. But when he did win back in 2016, that's when we really ramped up the Know Your Rights presentations, the DACA drives to help as many young people as possible get protection from deportation, right? That work was incredibly important. I'm proud of it. But let me just say that right now, the way that the system, what your idea is, right, in terms of immigration processing centers, I have to say, Colorado was where for-profit immigration detention was pioneered. Way back in 1987, back then it was Wackenhut, but then now it is the Geo Group, right? Right here in Aurora, Colorado, was the first for-profit immigration detention facility opened way back in 1987, right? And so profit is so much at the core of so much of the deportation machine right now, whether you're talking about surveillance with corporations like Palantir and Flock, whether you're talking about detention with Geo and Core Civic and all of these other corporations, and then from the removal aspect as well, right? Whether that's Key Lime Air, whether that's the busing companies that are raking in extraordinary amounts of profit. And so part of also abolishing ICE means removing that profit motive so that there isn't that financial incentive to fill a bed with a body every single day. And part of the work that Logan and the Colorado Times Recorder has uncovered is the fact that they are so hungry to feed the deportation machine in order to drive profits for these corporations that they are holding people because the detention centers are full, right? And that to me is a demonstration of just how inhumane and how ugly and vicious and cruel the entire immigration system is in this moment under Donald Trump.
Yes, I think the privatization of many things that the government should be responsible for leads to that.
Mhm.
Obviously, very related, but the prison industrial complex, very
Mhm.
similar. The government should be handling that. And when you privatize it, you essentially now have a profit motive. Well, that profit motive relies on people staying in prison. Um,
Exactly.
so it's misaligned incentives, if you will. I'm fully with you on that. And then we'll get into one of the stickier questions. Obviously, in my opinion, Israel has been committing a genocide in Gaza for the past 2 years. Um, Now they are invading Lebanon, they are invading Syria. They've attacked Jordan, and clearly Iran. Uh, so, what is your opinion? Was the Israeli war in Gaza a genocide, and should they receive any more weapons from the U.S.?
Yes, the genocide is a genocide. And I fundamentally believe that while, especially as Israel is committing these heinous acts, that we should have an arms embargo. I'd support the resolutions that Senator Sanders put forward that would create the arms embargo because I do believe that's the path forward. It is clear that Trump joined this illegal war with Iran because he felt he had to go and just back Netanyahu. Um, and we had no plan, no exit strategy, no sense of what this actually would mean. And look, defense contractors are going to make incredible amounts of money, but who's going to pay the price? We are. If not with our lives, although the death toll of um, uh, American service members is rising at a shocking rate, and but we are going to pay the price at the gasoline pump, at the grocery store. Now, in terms of, I was just reading an article yesterday about the Strait of Hormuz being a huge passageway or an incredible, important passageway for fertilizer, right? And what that can mean for food supply, right? Like these this is what happens when you jump into a war with with no rationale and no strategy, right? Who's going to pay the price? We are. And we have to demand that Congress do its freaking job. Here's the extent to which Trump had no plan. Days before the military strikes began, he had all three branches of Congress of the federal government. Trump had all three branches of the federal government convened for the State of the Union, right? The Tuesday before the bombing began. And he could have laid out a rationale for entering into this war had he had one. Fact of the matter is, it didn't exist. Iran only got passing mention. And that to me demonstrates the recklessness with which this administration is treating American lives.
And to there not really being a clear American goal, do you think he was baited into this by Netanyahu?
I look, it is clear that there is no rationale. It is clear that given some of the statements from Marco Rubio and that they did not they felt rushed into this, and they felt that this was just going to be another quick in and out, similar to what took place in Venezuela. But that has proven to not be the case, and they should have known better. And had they come to Congress to seek authorization, as they are required to do under both, our Constitution and also under international law and norms, we would have been having a very, very different conversation.
And I assume it's safe to say you would support a War Powers Act that returns those war powers to Congress?
100%, absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, Senator, it has been very great. I have gone well over the time you so graciously allotted me. But please tell the folks where to find you and how they can support you.
Absolutely. On all the socials, I'm at Senadora Julie. I'm the only, I am current, actually, no, now there are two state Latinas. Let me say that again. There are now two Latina state senators currently in the state Senate. Adrian Benavides just came in on a vacancy a couple of weeks back. But for the longest time, I was the only Latina state senator in the Colorado State Senate. And so we have an opportunity to really make history. So follow me on the socials. I'm at Senadora Julie. You can follow me at my website, julie4colorado.com, all spelled out. And look, in this moment, we have the opportunity to elect the first woman in Colorado's history to serve in the U.S. Senate, and also to increase the number of Latinas who have ever served in the U.S. Senate by 100%. The first and only is Senator Catherine Cortez Masto out of Nevada. And I think that we have the opportunity to make that change. We have to get past this go along to get along politics. And I just want to thank you for all of the work that you're doing to create spaces for community to get educated, get engaged, and get involved. Thank you for the opportunity to chat with you today. And like and follow us on the internets for all the things. And on our website, you can either become a volunteer. If you click on the volunteer button and get involved in our Slack, we've got a ton of really amazing folks. Or you can sign up and pitch in a couple of bucks as well, because it's clear that John Hickenlooper is going to try to buy this election, and we got to outwork him.
All right, and this has been Big Mike. You can find me at Big Mike on TikTok, Big Friggin' Mike on YouTube, and you can support me on Patreon if you have the means. And I am filling in again for Resistor Vic on his podcast while he is running for House District 47. So support him however you can as well. It's been great, Senator. Thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. Take care.
Well, folks, looks like we're back at the barn and it's time to call it a day. I sure do appreciate you spending your time with me. If you want to help keep this podcast going by supporting me, you can get a paid subscription on Substack, where I'm Resistor Vic. Or if you're the type that'd rather go to PayPal, I'm also resistorvic@gmail.com. Thanks again.